do not get free health care. You do not get free health care. Do you think that people who are 28 years old that can work and refuse to work should get free health care?
Congressman, a lot's been talked about Medicaid, health care, etc. A lot of countries in the world, Europe, Canada, they have health care for the people there. Outside, just now you said, you don't want to see a lazy 28-year-old get health care, whatever. My point is, every working and retired American should be entitled to health care. Would you sign on or write up a bill for Medicare for all? We've got Medicare now. We can start rolling back the age 5, 10 years at a time. Would you support that?
We can't afford that.
Yes, you can.
I am so tired of feeling helpless as a parent. Yes, my kids are grown adults. My oldest is 28, my youngest is 25. And I thought by teaching them what I learned, which is you work hard, you get a good job, you're going to get the things in life that you need, right? Worked for me. Why wouldn't it work for them? Because it doesn't. Because the world has fucking changed, all right? And now I feel like I see them struggling. And before my generation comes at me, yes, I understand struggling is a part of life. We all struggled. But there's a difference between struggling and drowning, all right? So we struggled and it was tough. But you know what? We made it. We knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel with our struggle. It seems like kids today, no matter how much they struggle, they just get further and further down the water into the drowning point, all right? When I was their age, I was making less than $10 an hour. And I can afford to live on my own. Now you have to be making 6-figure salary to get a decent, tiny little place to live. So what the fuck is going on and how do we help them as parents? I told my son, all you have to do is work hard, go to college or join the military like I did. He went to college, got his degree, got a full-time job. He moved back in with me right when he graduated from college because he said, hey, Mom, as soon as I get a job, which was within 2 weeks of him getting out of college, maybe take me 2 months and I'll save up enough money for me to move out. Okay, cool. It's been 10 months. He has saved almost every dime and still can't afford to live. Why are one-bedroom studio apartments almost $2,000 a month? Why? Like, I just don't get it. So I don't even think that there's even classes anymore. There used to be, upper class, middle class, lower class. It's literally turning into the ultra wealthy and then everybody else is just poor. Like, that's what is happening. And then I told him, hey, when you turn 25, at least your car insurance will go down. Hell no, he turned 25 and his car insurance went up $150. I tell him, if you need health insurance, get a good job. He has health insurance. He has had a medical emergency this week. Had to go to emergency room twice. He had to go to the emergency room because he couldn't get anybody to see him with the health insurance that he had. Right? So he had to go to an emergency room. Now he's out money for that too. It seems like you can never get ahead. And then my daughter, I told her all you have to do because she wanted to buy her own house. My daughter worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day to save up enough for this down payment. Finally got this house. She's paying double what I'm paying for my mortgage, but her loan was the same amount. And then her mortgage company, after she's already moved in, said, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you that you need this type of coverage, which we forgot in the beginning. That's an extra $200 you've been paying a month. And all they see when they come home is they watch social media, kids their age on lavish vacations with all this money and nothing to do, all these social media influencers, because we value those types of things over hard workers. We will pay them $10,000, but you work 40 hours a week, you can't afford it.
Dear Republican lawmakers, I'm an unemployed young person living in my mom's basement, and you just voted to take away my Medicaid. And you said that I needed to get a job because I'm a lazy bum. Well, here's how I became the lazy bum I am today. A year ago, I was employed, therefore I deserved health care. I was building buildings for our great nation. I was presenting research at conferences. But I got COVID, which developed into multiple chronic illnesses, which made me really lazy. Here's me lazily getting tested for my debilitating chronic fatigue. Here's me getting infusions because COVID destroyed my immune system because I'm so lazy. I was taking all these pills trying to maintain my job, but I was just getting sicker and sicker. Or, lazier and lazier, am I right? I got so sick that I needed to quit my job, leave the life that I had built, and move in with my mom, and it was all because I was just so lazy. I quickly blew through all my savings to maintain my healthcare, and because we're so far from a cure from long COVID, and let's be honest, who wants to fund that anyway, I had to get on Medicaid to maintain my health and keep myself alive. But now you've introduced work requirements to Medicaid to cure me of my laziness. I have the privilege of neglecting my health until it becomes a medical emergency and then showing up to the ER and then after that declaring medical bankruptcy. What freedoms! You'll probably tell me that this can all be avoided if I apply for disability, but we both know that that will take years to approve, if at all. So thank you, Republicans, for selling out my health for Jeff Bezos' next yacht, just as God intended. I'm proud to be an American.
How are people affording life right now? How are people tackling this cost of living on the average American salary? I just watched a TikTok of a teacher who makes a teacher's salary. I don't know what state she's in, so I don't know how much she makes, but her 1-bedroom apartment is $2,000. And when she spends $2,000 on that 1-bedroom apartment, it doesn't even come with a washer and dryer. So she has to go pay an additional $2 every time she wants to use their washer and dryer. Okay, like, how does that leave her any extra money to spend? And then she said she had a $400 car payment, which some people were bashing her on that. But in today's economy with interest rates, that's really not that bad. And I'm sure she needs a dependable car. So you talk about teacher's salary, $2,000 in rent, $400 car payment. You got insurance, you got groceries, electricity. Like, I don't understand how people are affording life right now, and it really makes me sad for some people. You have people who are like her. She's single, she has her own salary, or families where it just works out best for them for the mother to stay home. And if the father is just making an average American salary, how are they affording life without going in a bunch of debt? This lady who's a teacher started crying because she said she realizes on her salary and where she lives, she will actually end up in more debt. Then, like, she will just continue to accrue more debt and more debt and more debt because her salary is not matching the cost of living. And what's sad is I've seen people be like, just spend less. Listen, guys, the cost of living is rising and our salaries are stagnant, okay? So there's not just spend less. That's not the problem here. The problem is the cost of living is outrageous, and minimum wage in some states is still $7.25. Teachers in some states are still paid a ridiculously low salary, even though their job is super important. I don't know what we can do about this, but I'm just going on a rant because it really, really pisses me off.
The American dream is dead. Get up, go to work, go to bed. Even the 60-year-olds, that's the new American reality. My manager once told me that if I wanted to make a sustainable income, I should get a secondary job. Like, why should I? One job should be enough to live on, not to work every second just to survive. Hello everyone, my name is Anthony. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am the judge, the jury, and the executioner.
Dear Charlotte, prices have skyrocketed here between the tariffs and loss of farm workers and everything else. During a recent trip to the grocery store, I shop about once a month. Items that used to cost me about $100 cost me $175. Not quite double, but close. The Trump regime has ended the low-income home energy assistance program that helped many poor people, disabled people, and senior citizens heat their homes in winter. We don't know how we will afford heat this winter. People are discussing how low to turn down the thermostat and how to dress in layers to try to keep warm. People are planning to block off bedrooms with heavy sheets of plastic and just heat living rooms and kitchens to save money. The whole family can sleep on the living room floor. They're sharing tips like take bubble wrap over your windows and make sure you wear a hat indoors, even to bed, because you lose a lot of body heat through your head. A friend of mine who was on the verge of homelessness was evicted from her apartment because she could not pay the rent. She is now living in a tent in the desert in New Mexico. She figures she's going to die there. I feel powerless to help her. I got her an application for an apartment where I live, where rent would be based on her income, and I offered to pay the application fee of $30 for her. But she's hundreds of miles away and I can't give her money for gasoline to drive here, and I'm not sure her car would even make it. I know it feels to her like no one cares, and I know many people care, people around the world care, but that's not going to be enough to save many of us. It's hard not to despair. I tried to look at the bigger picture. My friend may not be saved, I may not be saved, but the future may be saved. We may help to save it, even if we ourselves are lost. I'm making chili today and baking bread. The chili has more onions and canned tomatoes and broth and less meat, so it's cheap. Homemade bread is always cheap. It's comfort food, and I am in need of comfort.
Here's the difference between medication costs in Australia, the US and Scotland. Americans, you're getting shafted, by the way. I've got 5 common medications and I'm going to tell you how much they cost in Australia, how much they cost in the US and how much they cost in Scotland, and you're going to be shocked, especially by the last one on the list. The reason I'm doing this is because Donald Trump is trying to put a 200% tariff on Australian exports of pharmaceuticals. That's possibly going to drive up the prices of medications in Australia. Here we go, a salbutamol inhaler. In Australia, $7 US, that's about £4. The good old US of A, 77 Australian dollars, that's about 40 quid. Scotland is free. Torvastatin, 30 tablets, $6.70 in Australia, $2,628 in America, free in Scotland. Meprazole, $6 in Australia, $326 in the US, free in Scotland. Zithromycin, which is an antibiotic, 5 tablets, $7.70 in Australia, $155 in America, free in Scotland. Here's the biggie, Phosphobir is a cure for hepatitis C. The Australian government were giving this out for free to eradicate hep C. In Scotland it's free. In the US it's $84,500, oh my god. See, in Scotland and Australia there's a socialist healthcare system, which means that the government subsidises the cost of medications. So to any Americans watching this, shove your tariffs right up.
Do you want to see how the wealthy actually talk about the poor? Let's take a look at a conversation that occurred between John Taffer and Laura Ingraham. Keep in mind that John Taffer is worth $14 million and Laura Ingraham is worth $40 million.
What if we gave that additional unemployment benefits to employers to incentivize people to go to work?
Well, what if we just cut off the unemployment? I mean, hunger is a pretty powerful thing. I don't mean physical hunger, because people who truly are in need help. I'm talking about people who can work but refuse to work. John, I want to ask you, though, about this idea of work-life balance. Have we taken that a step too far when you think of, well, a lot of the millennials talking about, well, I need time for self-care. I don't know why I'm harping on that tonight, but the whole self-care movement is a little, I mean, my mother is not with us anymore, but she worked by the time she was 12 during the Depression. If she heard the self-care thing, I think her head would explode.
You know, I think that's right.
Old
I have
school.
a friend in the military who trains military dogs, Laura, and they only feed a military dog at night because a hungry dog is an obedient dog. Well, if we're not causing people to be hungry to work, then we're providing them with all the meals they need sitting at home.
So let's break this down. First, Laura suggests that they should cut off unemployment altogether because being hungry is a good motivator. And even though she's quick to correct that she doesn't mean physical hunger, I don't believe that, and I'll get into why as we're breaking this down. Next, Laura brings up the idea of self-care in a mocking tone, and then lauds up this example of her mother who started working when she was 12. Because that's what they want. Trust me, the wealthy would be dying to employ your children if child labor were still legal. Not to mention that the idea that you should take care of yourself to them is laughable. You exist to work. Didn't you get the memo? And next, John Taffer talks about how when you train military dogs, you have to keep them physically hungry, and compares the poor to dogs who should be allowed to starve so that they'll go out and work. Which is why I don't believe Laura Ingraham's statement that she's not talking about physical hunger. And this whole conversation is predicated on this idea that Laura put out at the beginning of this clip saying that, well, you know, people who can work but don't. It's just this fake idea that people have been putting out there for decades that the majority of people on unemployment or on welfare are people that are completely capable of working but choose not to. Even though the standards for qualifying for unemployment are incredibly high. These wealthy people don't give a crap about you and would rather see you starve to death if you're not able to work toward their bottom line. We need to stop protecting them. We need to stop defending them. And we need to stop voting against our own best interests to further their wealth.
Every time this comes up, I want to talk about it because I find this so interesting how so many people don't understand that you can't budget yourself out of poverty. Being poor is more expensive than being wealthy. Not just because of the by volume money you have to spend, you know, the percentage of your income that you have to spend, but the things you buy are actually more expensive per product. And I was talking to a girlfriend I had some years ago, you know, and she brought up the question. She's like, I just wish more people had financial education and they could, you know, do better to learn how to budget themselves a little better. And maybe that would help. And I had to explain to her, I was like, when I made $15 an hour, my ex-wife, who I was married to at the time, this is going back like 15, 16 years ago, she made like $8 an hour working at the Meijer store in Michigan. And so with that money, we were down to like sub $1 left over, paying all of our bills. We had no debt, but that is how tight we were budgeting. I would go to the store and we would go to buy toilet paper, and a 4-pack of toilet paper was almost $4. So let's just go ahead and pretend $1 per roll. Now, if I had been able to spend $20 on toilet paper, I could have gotten a 48-pack. I could have gotten that toilet paper that I still would have used, but had I been able to buy it in a larger quantity, I would have been able to get it for 40 cents a piece. So much of the things that poor people engage in are because they literally cannot afford the more expensive option. Another fantastic example, and if you've been with me for a long time, you've heard this. When that same time frame, we were having to go to the laundromat to wash our clothes. It would cost about $80 a month to go to the laundromat to wash clothes for 2 adults and a baby. Why didn't you just buy a washer and dryer? When you're budgeting down to the penny, you can't afford to just go spend $200 on a used washer and dryer. Now, when I got a raise, I went from $15 an hour to $25 an hour. My paychecks were substantially bigger. And the first thing I did was go buy a washer and dryer. Now, that washer and dryer paid for itself in 2 months. We're paying $80 a month. It essentially paid for itself in 2 months. Now, every single month moving forward, after those first 2 months, I have access to an additional $80 in my bank account that I didn't have before. You throw the toilet paper on there, over that, like, just those 2 little things, it's $84 a month that I now have access to that I didn't have access to before, because I had the financial power to make the smarter financial decision. When you are poor, you do not have access to this power. And that's just 2 little baby examples. When you're poor, you know. And you guys have made it this far. I want to know what other examples, like, these are my 2 favorites because they apply to me, but I want to know like other examples that you've seen like this.
In 2 months, it's going to become completely unaffordable to live in the United States. And I'm not talking about luxury lifestyle. I'm talking about basic middle-class needs. I run a relocation business out of Costa Rica. I asked my clients, who are a couple from Bushwick, Brooklyn, why they were thinking of moving abroad. They sent me their monthly budget spreadsheet. So combined, they make $120,000 a year. And from that, they get to bring home about $7,400 a month after taxes. Their rent is $3,100 a month. And their health insurance is about to skyrocket to $1,750. They budget about $1,000 a month for groceries. Their utilities, internet, cell phones, and MetroCard are another $1,300 or so. So at the end of the month, this leaves them with about $250. And that doesn't include any unexpected expenses or the hope for investments or the hope for a savings account. So what they said to me is that this is what running in place feels like. And the reason that they want to move abroad is because they actually want to move forward with their lives.
Nobody is living beyond their means. It's literally a math problem, not a budgeting one. People keep gaslighting others about the corrupt system we live in rather than opening up their eyes and condemning the fabricated, corrupt system we are forced to live in. My grandparents told me it's a budgeting problem. They bought their house for $30,000. We are paying $24,000 a year in rent. Not everyone gets it. Some people can't wrap their head around the fact that the world has changed for us. Let's talk about healthcare. It's crazy how America pushes back against universal healthcare. An MRI in Belgium costs 51 euros. Here, an MRI with insurance costs $500, and each injection is $500, and insurance doesn't cover injections. This is irresponsible healthcare. You are paying into Social Security, right? But they are trying to raise the retirement age, and they are calculating that we might not be able to cash out on Social Security when we get older. The system is betting against us. The Republicans keep on voting for the same administration that is giving tax cuts to the rich while taxing the poor out of existence. This is no longer the country where you can work yourself out of poverty anymore. You are either born into wealth or you are a worker bee for the rest of your life. What are your thoughts? So to everyone who watches my video, stay alert, stay focused, don't fail for the government psyop, watch blue, talk blue, vote blue, and until the next video, thank you for your attention to this matter.